Hi everyone, welcome back to Rabbi's Reflection. I'm glad that you're joining with us today. We'll be continuing in our study of My Grandfather's Blessings by Dr. Naomi Remen, and today reading the story Beyond Words. Stay with us as we read through the story and then offer some reflections. How hard it is to be young, Father O'Shea told me. I laughed and asked him what he meant. Eyes twinkling, he told me of the first patient he had been called to see as a hospital chaplain. Very young and desperate to be of service, he had gone to visit a woman who was facing major surgery the following morning. She was lying in her bed, tense with anxiety. He had no sooner pulled up a chair when she told him, "Father, I feel certain that I'm going to die tomorrow." Nothing in his training had prepared him for this, and he had sat there with absolutely no idea of how to respond. To cover his confusion, he had reached out and taken her hand. She had begun to talk then. Still holding her hand and barely listening, he had reached back in his mind for some of the great words of comfort from his tradition. The words of Merton, of Teresa de Avila, of Jesus. He had them all with him when he had entered the room, but somehow now they were gone. The woman continued to talk and even to cry a little, and his heart went out to her in her fear. At last she closed her eyes, and he had taken this opportunity to ask God for help, for the words that he needed, but he had found no words at all. Eventually she had simply fallen asleep, and he had left, vanquished, convinced that he was not cut out to be a priest. He had spent the rest of the day and most of the night in an agonized assessment of his shortcomings and his calling. He had been too ashamed to visit her again. But a few weeks later, he had received a note from her, thanking him for all he had done for her during his visit, and most especially for all the wonderful things he had told her, the words of comfort and wisdom. She would never forget them. And then she quoted some of what she had heard him say at length. Father O'Shea began to laugh, and I did too. It was so long ago, he chuckled. Thank goodness we can never be that young again. He paused for a moment to wipe his eyes. You know, Rachel, he told me, over these years I have learned that when I pray to be able to be of service to someone, sometimes God says yes, and sometimes God says no. But quite often, God says, step aside, Patrick. I'll do it myself. Today's story is just such a wonderful story, and I think something so simple, yet we take for granted, and we often overthink how we can be of support to someone else in a moment of crisis. I need to have the right words to say. And how often I hear, Rabbi, it's you that have the right words to say. I can't say anything. I wouldn't know how to say it. And I'll just let you in on a little secret. Rabbis or other spiritual leaders also don't know the right words to say. We, just like Father O'Shea, have had our experiences where we're thrown in to our first encounter with someone who's deeply suffering, and we have no idea what to do. And what we learn quickly, is what Father O'Shea learned, is that you don't have to say anything. If you're simply a loving presence, that is what's healing. It's such a lovely story, and it's not silly. It's true. I'll tell you that as someone who works in a healthcare setting as well. Someone who works as a rabbi and a chaplain. The connection that you can make, the impact that you can make, as Dr. Remen titles this week's story, is beyond words. It's showing up, it's being present, it's holding someone's hand, it's offering a prayer. It's allowing them to express whatever they need to express, and you, as the listener, to be a non-judgmental and comforting presence. Right? You'd think that this is what rabbis or other spiritual leaders learn when they train. How should you answer these questions? No, you don't learn those questions, sadly, or those answers. And then you're thrown into the work, and you realize, oh, what do I need from my training? And you actually then have to undergo a second training, a training to be a pastoral counselor, a pastoral presence. And that first time, or the first number of times, you feel like a worry and anxiety that you have no words. You're not able to, what can you really offer? And then you find out, like Father O'Shea found out, from that patient months later, of all the wonderful things that you told her, even though you didn't say a thing. And so I offer that not just to the spiritual leaders amongst us, but to everyone, that we don't have to have words. We simply just have to be present. And it's really hard to be present. It's really hard to enter into someone else's space and allow them to be the one who takes up the space, to allow them to express whatever emotions they may be feeling. And for me, to simply be quiet. Not quiet as in disengaged and distracted and thinking about something else, but totally present with them, believing them, trusting them, affirming them, walking alongside them. And that, in some ways, is the truest healing and connection that we can provide for someone else. So I hope you have a great day and a great week, and I'll see you soon.